Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here today, and thanks, Elaine, for inviting me. So today I'm going to talk about how to use person-generated health data, which we'll be defining in a second, for a variety of applications. Specifically, today the focus will be on public health, and tomorrow in the track AI and Pharma, I'll be focusing more on life sciences application. So come tomorrow, I think 9-10 a.m. AI and Pharma as well, for BC, if I remember correctly. So person-generated health data, PGHD, used to be called patient-generated health data, a definition by ONC, the Office of National Coordinator for Health Science and Technology, and is defined as all the data that's generated by patient, it was defined as, and their caregiver in the attempt to track their health. This data, however, is so wide-reaching and so important that it's not only patient that benefits from its generation, but it has really more become of something of everyone. And that's why the acronym is being retrofitted to person-generated health data. What does this data look like? Well, it could look like many things. You can go the more futuristic direction, as you see in this article from Science Translational Medicine of now 2 years ago, of sensor that measure everything, wearables, implantables, your smart car, your smart house. But one of the things that shouldn't be forgotten is that the voice of the person itself, in terms of, say, surveys or instrument for measuring pains or other way of just like expressing those patient-reported outcome, as they're called, is a very important piece of person-generated health data. So this is just to give an idea of a small subset of person-generated health data that's only the commercial wearable devices 2 years ago. So this is not even up to date. This is like this huge dendrogram. If you zoom in, you see crazy things like, heart rate monitoring, that's not too crazy, but you see things for tracking where your pets are, environmental exposures like ambient light and pollution, stress, emotions, and a lot more, as you can see. And you can claim that a lot of this data is not valid, has not been validated, and a lot of these things are toys. Probably a few of them are not alive anymore as companies, since this is 2 years old. But some of these toys are starting to getting traction. And so for those of you who have an Apple Watch, which is pretty common in the US at this point, there are a few functions on the Apple Watch that are now FDA cleared. So that means that our medical devices and those functions are related to measuring heart rhythm and fall detection. So the validation piece is catching up, and this data is becoming more and more present in our everyday lives. You can take now an ECG on your Apple Watch and send a PDF to your doctor. What does this data can be used for? Well, it could be used to complement the sporadic and biased sample that we have in healthcare. You go to the doctor only when you're sick, hopefully, so not that often, and you interact with a PI of a study, principal investigator of a study, only at some specific visits. But really, what matters is what happens in between these visits. So the ability to track, measure everything that's invisible to the health system is really something that can patient-generated health data, participant-generated health data, person-generated health data can help us do efficiently. How to collect this data? This is a very important topic these days, as tech companies and in general, folks with less of a clinical research background might opt for ways of collecting this data that are not optimal, not known to the end user, sometimes unbeknown to the user. A lot of it is being collected and amassed. And that is not the right way. And allow me 30 seconds just to talk about the way we do it at Evidation. It's going to set the stage for the few things that I'm going to tell you next on how we work on this data. We've built Achievement, which is this 3.6 million virtual patient cohort in the United States. And it works that you download an app, Apple Store, Android. You can connect all wearable devices out there. You get reward for activity, and you get asked, you get the opportunity to participate in research studies. The screenshot here on the right shows how one of this research study can be shown to you. Once you're part of a research study, for instance, hey, pharma company is interested in studying migraines or in studying a new product for migraines. Are you interested in joining? Then you become part of a research study, which means going through informed consent and all the good things that we have in clinical research to make sure that everyone knows every data point, what is it used for, who is it used by, and for how long. And so I'll be stressing this idea of importance of data use and privacy over all the talk, but I really want to stress out the fact that even if a lot of this data is being collected by new technology, we don't have necessarily to adopt the way of some new technology of collecting, let's say, behind the back of the user. This is a nice representation to me that kind of talks to the power of variety of person-generated health data. On the top of this very busy slides, you see 3 different kind of data that can be collected, in this particular case, in a study in chronic pain, run and sponsored by Evidation. You see a table of demographic and a validated instrument for anxiety and depression measure, pretty standard on the left-hand side. And then we've collected information around satisfaction with treatments of chronic pain. As you know, chronic pain is something that it's really hard to deal with. And that's actually more akin to what you see in reviews of consumer product. And then on the bottom right, you have a measure of activity that comes from commercial wearable devices, which is objective and collected in the real world. And all this data can be analyzed holistically. And all this data can be collected very efficiently, and patient can be enrolled in this kind of studies in 1,000 per day instead of 1,000 per year. So this allows research to really move up at a different speed as it's been moving until now. Some example of the things that you can learn from this data, right? It's great that you can collect it. You should collect it in a way that the participant knows what they're doing and who they're giving the data for. But what can you derive from that? You can derive measures that are of interest of the participants itself. In this particular case, here are 2 examples comparing a cohort of people living with type 2 diabetes against matched controls in dimensions such as the length of their sleep, the quality of their sleep, their resting heart rate. That is very novel and very different to what is being used today, where usually these patients are compared in terms of a biomarker that's in their blood called A1C that tells how the condition is progressing, or maybe risk factors like BMI. In the same level, the same idea, it's on the right-hand side where you see patient with multiple sclerosis being compared to a cohort of matched controls in terms of the time it takes to fall asleep, which is a very important thing for them, but it's not one of the biomarkers that we use in clinical research or practice to understand the progression of the disease. So person-generated health data can give this opportunity to create measures that are more patient-centric and collected to the real world. Now, switching gears, talking about flu a little bit, what I really find interesting of this data is the ability to zoom in to an individual level. So here on the top of the slide, you see a day in the life of someone that got the flu at some point. The dashed vertical line is a flu event, and the points are daily step counts from a Fitbit. And the blue line is just a smooth average of those. Obviously, there's a dip in steps around the flu that starts a little bit earlier and goes in during the recovery. But what's really cool is, at least in my opinion, is when you zoom in to the minute level. So for every minute of the day, how many steps have been taken in that minute, which again comes from a commercial wearable device like a Fitbit. And you see that you have hours of the day on the X, days to and from the flu on the Y. You see that there is activity that starts becoming apparent during night hours before the flu event. So it means that the sleep is going to be disturbed. And then you see that the activity levels is fading off during the recovery from flu, and especially is fading off on the fact that there is no bright red. So there's no high level of activity. It's not only the average that goes down, but really, people don't go for the run, obviously. So when you know this individual level, one of the things you can do is what we did here. This is a preliminary readout presented last year at the International Society of Disease Surveillance. It's based on data collected from 125,000 achievement participants that every week were asked, did you get the flu this week? Yes, no, what kind of flu was that? And also were asked to give permission to access their Fitbit data during that time. So if you align Fitbit data at the time they tell you they have the flu, this is what it looks like. So you can see the dip in steps, and the fact that they walk less is not too surprising, but understanding how much less they walk becomes a measure of burden that can be used to estimate loss of productivity or even sick days. And one of the interesting things is that most of those flu events are actually not being reported to the medical care. These people didn't go to the doctor because the flu wasn't that bad, but you can still see that there is relevant at the activity loss level. And on the right-hand side, even more interestingly, you can see a change in resting heart rate at the population level. What is the application of these things? Well, you can speculate a lot, but one of those that became really clear came up just a little less than 1 week ago in this Lancet Digital Health paper that shows that if you take that resting heart rate data I just showed at a population level and you call anomalous week a week that has resting heart rate at 0.5 standard deviation above the average of the user, and you use that to proxy the number of people that are currently having flu or ILI, influenza-like illness, in a certain location, you get a pretty good match with the number of ILI reports from CDC. So in the top plot, which is for the California state specifically, you see ILI reported by CDC in the red. In green, you see a baseline model that's just using the previous 3 week as to estimate the next one. So it's an autoregressive of level 3 model. And then in blue, you see the estimation that comes from just like looking at a number of anomalous resting heart rate from the Fitbit population. Now, like the commentary of this paper say, if someone had used a 52 autoregressive model as a baseline, the system with Fitbit base wouldn't have been in the baseline. But the point is that in this particular study, it was only resting heart rate at the day level and sleep at the day level that was used only for 50,000 people. So imagine if you have 125,000 people with minute level resting heart rate, sleep, and steps, and you have individual permission for that data to go back and ask and validate some of your finding, what you can do. And in fact, we're open to collaboration if you have some ideas on how to do that. I want to conclude with this picture that I'll be showing a lot more tomorrow in the AI and pharma track. This is what we call a behaviogram. It's a day in the life of a participant of a study here in cognitive decline that we ran in collaboration with Apple Computer and Eli Lilly, a pharma company. The study collected 16 terabytes of data over 113 participants over the period of 12 weeks, and it was geared towards understanding different patterns of different ability of cognition from this kind of patterns. Data sources were sources from 4 different devices: an iPhone, an Apple Watch, an iPad, and an embed sensor. And the behaviogram is just a representation that aligns all those channels and imputes them and allows to inspect data quality and hypothesis generation. Again, a lot more about this, what you can actually learn from this, what kind of measures you can derive when you understand someone's sleep interruption, the use of apps when people are going to work, whether someone is walking and talking over the phone. The kind of measurement you can develop on that I'll be talking about tomorrow. The last point I want to make is that if you are able to build something like this, you are massively invading privacy. And so you have to be able to do it in a way that whoever is sharing the data with you is fully aware of what they're sharing for what, who's going to touch the data in the use case that you are presenting them in the informed consent, and also all derived case in the future as well. And so, yeah, I really hope that this is the direction that technology will go, is like learn more from life sciences, clinical research, and in general, fields that have done human subject research for much longer, and And if you do it so, then you can still extract a lot of value from that and potentially even return it to the user because you have a direct connection with them. With that, thank you very much.